You believe you know yourself. You believe the person you show to the world, the voice you use, the thoughts you share, the choices you make, is the real you. But Carl Jung warned us, that is only the surface, a carefully constructed mask, a role you play so the world will accept you. Beneath it, there is something far more ancient, far more powerful, and far less polite. Jung called it the shadow. Not a monster in the dark, not a supernatural curse, but the part of your mind that you pretend doesn't exist. Every desire you've been told is wrong, every emotion you've been told to bury, every impulse you've been taught to be ashamed of. They live there, waiting. The shadow does not sleep. It watches. It learns. And if you refuse to acknowledge it, it grows restless. The danger, Jung said, is not that you have a shadow. The danger is that you ignore it, that you pretend you are only the person you want to be and forget about the person you really are. The more you hide from your shadow, the more control it gains over you. Not in sudden outbursts of evil, but in subtle whispers, quiet decisions, the slow erosion of your will. Until one day, you wake up and realize you are no longer the one making the choices. Jung didn't speak about the shadow in a way meant to scare people into morality. He spoke as a doctor, as a man who spent decades watching human beings tear themselves apart from the inside. He knew the shadow wasn't just anger or greed. It was also talent, creativity, strength. Qualities you reject because they don't fit your image of who you are supposed to be. The shadow contains not only what you fear about yourself, but also what you need to become whole. But here is the forbidden truth, the part most people never want to hear. If you refuse to meet your shadow, it will meet you. Not in a calm conversation, but in moments of weakness, rage, or despair. You will think you are acting rationally, but it will be the shadow steering the wheel, pushing you into decisions you later regret, making you sabotage your relationships, your work, even your future. And because you will not admit the shadow exists, you will blame bad luck, other people, or fate itself. This is how the shadow controls you. It hides behind your own denial. It is patient. It waits for the right moment. And then, with a single push, it changes everything. Jung compared it to meeting a stranger who somehow knows all your secrets, all your weaknesses, and all the exact words to make you obey. That stranger is you, but you won't see it that way. You will tell yourself you lost control, that you didn't mean it, that it wasn't really you. That's the perfect camouflage. If you believe you were not yourself, you will never realize that in fact you were yourself, the part of yourself you've been hiding. The world teaches you to keep your image clean, your reputation intact, your voice calm. It tells you to swallow your anger, hide your fears, suppress your desires, and you listen. You build walls inside your mind. On one side, the person you present to the world. On the other, the shadow, swelling in the dark, fed by every lie. You tell yourself about who you are, and here is the cruel irony. The more good you try to be by suppressing your flaws, the stronger your shadow becomes. Jung warned that the people who believe themselves to be purely moral are often the ones most controlled by the shadow, because they are the ones most blind to it. You may think of criminals, dictators, and tyrants as people who gave in to the shadow. But it is not only in grand acts of evil that the shadow works. It moves in the quiet betrayals, the small lies, the unspoken resentment. It appears when you say yes when you mean no, when you smile while hating someone, when you secretly hope for someone's failure but pretend to wish them well. These moments seem harmless, but they are the shadow's fingerprints. Carl Jung's warning was simple but merciless. You cannot escape the shadow by ignoring it. The only way to keep it from controlling you is to look at it directly. That means admitting you are not as kind, as honest, as noble as you want to believe. It means accepting that you are capable of cruelty, selfishness, and weakness, and that these qualities are as human as your virtues. The shadow is not your enemy, but it will become one if you force it into exile. and the longer it remains in exile, the more dangerous it becomes. Jung believed that confronting the shadow was the only path to genuine strength, because only then are you whole. A person at war with themselves is an easy victim. A person who knows every part of themselves cannot be controlled. So I will ask you directly, when was the last time you met your shadow? When was the last time you looked at yourself and said, yes, that's me, even the parts I wish were not? If you cannot remember, then perhaps your shadow is closer than you think, and perhaps it's already making your choices. And if that is true, you will not even notice until it's too late. Jung warned that the shadow never takes control in one dramatic leap. It does not burst through the door like a storm. Instead, it slips in quietly, step by step, so gently that you don't even realize you've moved from being the one in control to being the one controlled. It begins with a small compromise. You silence your opinion to avoid conflict. You tell yourself it's not worth the trouble. That moment feels harmless, even wise. But the shadow marks it as a victory, a proof that it can make you act against your real feelings, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes to ignore yourself. Then comes the subtle resentment. You start to feel bitter toward people you once trusted, but you keep smiling, keep nodding, keep playing the part you've always played. On the outside, nothing has changed. Inside, something is boiling. This boiling point is where the shadow gains its fuel. The shadow feeds on contradiction, on the gap between what you feel and what you allow yourself to express. Every time you pretend to agree when you don't, every time you fake happiness, when you're exhausted, every time you say yes while screaming no inside, the shadow grows stronger. It is not the lie to others that empowers it, but the lie to yourself. Jung observed that when a person refuses to integrate these hidden emotions, they don't disappear. They gather in the unconscious, waiting. And when the right moment comes, they erupt, often in ways completely out of proportion to the situation. That's why someone will explode in rage over a minor inconvenience, or sabotage a relationship over a small misunderstanding. The shadow doesn't care about logic. It cares about expression. And if it can't speak calmly, it will scream. Here is the trap. In that moment of eruption, you will feel powerful. You will feel as if you have finally spoken your truth or stood up for yourself. But it's not you. It's the shadow breaking free, and it doesn't care what damage it causes. Afterward, you may feel ashamed, regretful, or confused about your own behavior. That shame is the shadow's second weapon, because now you will try to hide it even deeper. And the cycle continues. Jung described this process like a psychological parasite. Not because the shadow is foreign to you, but because it lives off your refusal to accept it. Imagine a plant in complete darkness. It grows long, twisted roots, searching blindly for water. Your shadow is the same, growing in the dark, its roots tangling around every thought, every choice, until you can no longer tell where you end and it begins. The most dangerous thing about the shadow is that it will often disguise itself as your protector. It will whisper, "Don't trust them. Don't try that, you'll fail. Don't speak up, they'll reject you." It makes you cautious, guarded, small, and you will believe it's keeping you safe, not realizing it's keeping you trapped. Sometimes the shadow will speak through your pride. It will convince you that you are morally superior, that you are above others, that your opinion is the only correct one. Pride is one of the shadow's favorite masks because it blinds you to your own flaws. When you feel righteous, you stop questioning yourself. And when you stop questioning yourself, the shadow has free rein. This is why Jung believed that self-awareness is not about thinking you know who you are. It is about knowing the parts of yourself you wish didn't exist. It is about recognizing when you are acting out of fear, resentment, or pride, and admitting it before it poisons your choices. He gave an example from his own patients. A woman who always agreed with her husband, never challenged him, never showed her true feelings. Outwardly, she was the perfect wife. Inwardly, she grew more and more bitter. One day, she found herself cutting him with words so sharp they left him in shock. She couldn't explain why she had said them, but Jung could. It was the shadow, released after years of silence. The cure, he said, was not to be nicer or try harder, but to start telling the truth about her feelings, not in a burst of rage, but in small, consistent acts of honesty. Because every time you face the shadow willingly, it loses some of its hold over you. The mistake most people make is believing they can defeat the shadow by fighting it. Jung warned that this is impossible. You cannot destroy a part of yourself. You can only understand it, accept it, and give it a place in your conscious life. When the shadow is integrated, it stops working against you and starts working with you. The traits you once feared, assertiveness, ambition, passion, can become strengths instead of dangers, but integration is not comfortable. It means admitting to thoughts you'd rather deny, desires you'd rather hide, and weaknesses you'd rather ignore. It means looking in the mirror and seeing the full picture, not just the version you've polished for others. The shadow does not disappear because you want it to. It disappears when you invite it into the light, and for many that is more terrifying than any nightmare, because it means changing the story you've told yourself your entire life. So the question becomes, will you choose to see it now, or will you wait until it takes over completely? Remember, the shadow is patient, but you are running out of time. If the shadow were visible, if you could see it as a shape or a person following you, you would never ignore it. But it's invisible, hidden in the folds of your own mind, which is why most people never realize it has taken over until the damage is already done. Jung explained that the first sign of shadow control is emotional reactions that seem bigger than the situation demands. You tell yourself you're just tired or just stressed, but deep down you know that your anger, your jealousy, your defensiveness is not really about what just happened. It's about something that has been sitting inside you, growing, waiting for a reason to come out. Another sign is patterns that repeat, even when you try to change them. You keep ending up in the same kind of toxic relationship. You keep sabotaging your career right when success is within reach. You keep breaking promises to yourself. These are not accidents. They are the shadow enforcing the same script over and over, because it knows that the familiar, even when it's painful, feels safer than the unknown. The shadow also speaks through overcompensation. Have you ever met someone who talks endlessly about how honest they are, how kind they are, how loyal they are? Jung would warn you to be careful, not because they are lying to you, but because they are lying to themselves. When a person builds their entire identity around a single virtue, it is often because they are trying to hide its opposite inside them. The more they insist on their honesty, the more lies they are hiding from themselves. The more they proclaim their kindness, the more cruelty they are afraid to face. And sometimes the shadow doesn't come through in what you do, but in what you avoid. The conversations you never have, the risks you never take, the passions you never pursue. You think you're being practical or playing it safe, but really the shadow is whispering that it's better not to try, because trying might reveal parts of yourself you don't want to see. Jung saw it in countless lives. The person who avoids leadership because they fear their own ambition. The person who avoids intimacy because they fear their own vulnerability. The person who avoids confrontation because they fear their own anger. In each case, the avoidance is not protection, it is submission. The shadow also uses projection as one of its most effective tools. Projection is when you see in others the things you refuse to see in yourself. You accuse someone of being selfish when, in truth, you are ignoring your own selfish motives. You call someone arrogant, but it's really your own pride you can't stand to confront. Projection keeps you blind and makes sure you never suspect the real source of your emotions, yourself. Jung warned that projection is especially dangerous because it can destroy relationships, families, even nations. When a group of people refuses to see their own flaws, they will project them onto an enemy and then feel justified in attacking that enemy. The shadow, once unleashed in a group, becomes far more destructive than it ever could be in a single person. There is another, quieter sign, the sense that you are living someone else's life. You follow a routine, keep commitments, maintain appearances, but somewhere in the back of your mind, you know this is not the life you truly want. This quiet misery is a hallmark of shadow control, because the shadow thrives when you are too afraid to change. It whispers that it's too late, that you've made your choices, that this is just how life is. And so you stay where you are, trapped not by the world, but by yourself. For Jung, the tragedy was that most people only begin to see the shadow when life falls apart, when they are forced to confront the reality they've avoided for years. A divorce, a betrayal, a public failure, a loss. These are the moments when the shadow steps out of the dark and into the light. Not because you invited it, but because it has decided the time has come. The key, Jung believed, was to meet it before that happens. To recognize the signs, to turn toward it willingly, to start a conversation with it while you still have the choice. He compared it to making peace with a wild animal. If you corner it, it will attack. But if you approach it with respect and awareness, it may show you things you could never have found on your own. The irony is that the shadow's goal is not to destroy you. It wants integration. It wants to be acknowledged. It wants to bring you the parts of yourself you've lost. But it will use any means necessary to get your attention. Even sabotage, even chaos, even pain. So here's the question Jung would put to you now. Can you name the part of yourself you are most afraid of? Can you look at it without turning away? Can you admit that it belongs to you? Because until you do, it will be the unseen hand shaping your life. And if you ignore that hand for too long, one day it will close around you. And you will call it fate, not realizing it was always you. Jung never promised that facing the shadow would be easy. In fact, he warned that it might be the most difficult task you will ever undertake. But he also said that nothing else could give you more power over your life. Because once you see the shadow, you cannot be manipulated by it. And when you cannot be manipulated by yourself, you become nearly impossible to manipulate by others. So how do you do it? How do you bring the shadow into the light without letting it consume you? Jung's answer was deceptively simple. Awareness and integration. Not suppression, not destruction. Integration. You do not erase a part of yourself. You learn to work with it. The first step is honest self-observation. This means paying attention to your reactions, your habits, your triggers, without justification or excuse. When someone irritates you, ask yourself why. Is it really them? Or is it something they are reflecting back to you, something you'd rather not see? Jung would tell you, your strongest reactions often point directly to your shadow. The second step is admitting your capacity for everything you judge in others. If you see arrogance, admit you are capable of arrogance. If you see cruelty, admit you are capable of cruelty. This is not the same as approving of those traits. It is simply acknowledging that you are human and that no human is free from darkness. This humility is the key to integration. The third step is active expression in safe forms. If your shadow holds your anger, find a way to express anger constructively, through art, writing, exercise, or honest conversation. If it holds ambition you've denied, take a step toward a goal you've been avoiding. If it holds fear, confront something small that scares you. Each time you give the shadow a conscious voice, you rob it of the need to act in unconscious, destructive ways. The fourth step is continuous dialogue. Jung often encouraged his patients to literally talk to their shadow, in writing, in imagination, even aloud when alone. Ask it what it wants. Ask it what it fears. Treat it as a part of you that has been silenced for too long. At first it will respond with confusion or hostility, but over time, it will reveal truths you could not have reached on your own. But Jung also warned, do not attempt this from a place of arrogance. If you approach the shadow thinking you are above it, it will humble you quickly. Approach it as an equal, because it is. You are not good and it bad. You are one. In the process of integration, something strange happens. The very traits you once feared in yourself begin to transform. Your suppressed anger becomes courage. Your denied ambition becomes purpose. Your hidden vulnerability becomes empathy. And with each transformation, the shadow stops being your enemy and starts becoming your ally. Yet Jung insisted on one final truth. Integration is not a one-time event. The shadow is always there, always shifting, always growing as you do. You will meet it many times in your life. The goal is not to defeat it once and for all, but to maintain the relationship. To know its voice so well that you can recognize it instantly before it takes the wheel. And this is where most people fail. They meet their shadow once, feel a sense of victory, and then turn away. They stop listening. They fall back into denial. And the shadow waits, patient as ever, for its chance to return. Jung's advice was to never stop watching, never stop questioning, never stop integrating. Because the moment you believe you are finished with the shadow is the moment it slips past you again. So I leave you with this. Somewhere in your life right now, the shadow is speaking. It might be in the tension you feel toward a friend. It might be in the secret resentment you carry toward someone close to you. It might be in the dream you keep ignoring. If you want freedom, you must turn toward that voice, not away from it. Close your eyes tonight and ask yourself, what part of me have I refused to see? And when the answer comes, and it will, do not dismiss it. Invite it in. Sit with it. Let it speak. Because if you do not, the day will come when it will speak for you, and you will not like what it says. Carl Jung's warning is as relevant now as it was in his lifetime. The shadow you refuse to face will become the master you never intended to serve. And when that happens, it will not announce itself. It will simply be there, guiding your hand, shaping your words, making your choices, until you are no longer sure who you are. The choice is yours. See it now, or be led by it forever. And remember, the longer you wait, the deeper its roots grow, and the harder they are to pull from the soil of your mind.